Okay, so I guess we're live. All right, so live stream number 2. Can't you hear me, Gnostic? Oh, okay. Anyway, I should probably just get back to my own thing. I see nobody's here yet, and so I guess while nobody's here, I have a little bit of what's left of my cigarette here. Oh, hello, Niche. Wonder why it's interesting because at the moment it says nobody's watching, but doesn't matter. I'll put something in the chat myself. Okay, so anyway, part of what I'm going to do tonight in this ongoing live stream on Mondays at 8 p.m. is to talk about things from a Gnostic perspective. I was realizing that you see 3. Oh, I see 4. Good, very good. So we are in really interesting times, and we're gonna kind of have to recreate ourselves in certain ways. I think I'm going to have to get back. I'm going to get back to my own camera and see what I'm doing. Oh, I didn't. I think I don't want to watch that. All right, now I got myself. So, what I'm going to try and make talking about the Sophianic Narrative and kind of the Gnostic worldview. I think there are really many ways to make it interesting and not just about the subject. In many ways, like Annunaki. Okay, now the Annunaki is a subject all by itself. And I think there's a lot of confusion regarding who and what the Annunaki were. And part of that's because I think the Annunaki made up a lot of shit about themselves. You know, from the various clay tablets and things that we have, they're written down by scribes who are taking dictation from whoever is giving the dictation. So I guess that would be the dictators. And so what we see as you get deeper and you read more and more of the Sumerian texts is that there's a lot of gloating. And so the book I'm going to be working with a little bit about the Annunaki is this one here. Anton Park's Eden. Now, Anton Parks is not a very well-known person in the Annunaki field, but he's probably done some of the best work of the people by really devoting himself to years and years of study. And apparently, as he writes in one of the forwards in one of his books, he entered a state where he entered alternate realities. Now, this is a very interesting concept for me, because Tolkien and Carl Jung both had years where they were entering worlds in their in their waking consciousness. They were entering worlds and getting experiences. Tolkien would say, when sometimes with elvish words and other things he got, he would tell his close friends, because people who wouldn't think he was crazy, that the elves gave him the word. He was accessing, this is Tolkien now, he was accessing a world that was like a parallel universe, and he was just, especially in his earlier works, The Lord of the Rings, I think he started, he had to put some of his own stuff in, because it had to be interesting. And so, same thing with Carl Jung. And the funny thing is, the material that each one of those men got during those alternate world periods, they put in things they called red books. Anyway, Anton Parks had a similar situation. Although what's interesting about his situation is where Tolkien apparently loved that state and ended up writing, there's a short story in one of his unfinished tales about a guy who could enter the fairy world, and then he was given something by the fairies, and he could enter fairy world, and at one point that was taken from him. And both Tolkien and Carl Jung came to a point where they suddenly no longer had access to the world they had had for years, and in some cases decades. In Tolkien's case, I think it was a few decades. In Carl Jung's case, I think it was at least a decade. Anton Parks said that he consciously broke his that state he could enter because he wanted to lead a normal life. Excuse me while I didn't eat anything. It is 8 o'clock Eastern time, so I'm going to have some of my little protein powder, pumpkin powder protein drink. Because I plan to make this go for 2 hours. Let me check my chat for a second. Okay, so I'm going to actually interrupt and start. I'm going to say hello to Niche and UC Fit. Okay, hello UC Fit. Soul Traveler, hello. And okay, those are the people. No sound good here? Huh? Hi, Robin. So if there's any sound issues, I mean, I'm looking at my panel and I see my mic indicating that I'm there. Maybe I should move it a little closer, but I don't want to block my book. So anyway, so this book here that I'm working for from Eden is an Anton Parks book, and so his translations I consider to be superior to any of the many other translations, and he does refer to other people. But what I intend to do is, from parsing out of these Sumerian and Akkadian and other clay texts from that area of Iraq, Assyria, which is now Syria, parts of Turkey, parts of Eastern Turkey. I'm going to make a case for the Sophianic Narrative. And, of course, the Sophianic Narrative will kind of come out in bits and bits. After I've kind of got some interest, people might go, what is this narrative? And then I'll kind of do it. I want to write it out. And but for now, I want to just create a conversation. Well, I should say a dialogue. And I'm going to keep on checking. Sounds pretty good here. Okay. So I just, occasionally I'll check in with the live chat in case there's any questions there. But I'm just kind of going to go here for a moment. I'm going to have to put on my reading glasses so I don't screw things up. And it's going to, I think this is going to be fairly interesting. Now, it's interesting, Anton Parks makes a disclaimer in the beginning of this book, because in certain cases, he'll compare the biblical text with what appear to be the original sources. And, well, he dedicates this book to people of the beginnings and their descendants, and to those who've been able to keep intact the memory of their origins and their connection with the earth, in spite of being deprived of their timeless heritage by the sacrosanct scriptures. I hope you understood what he's saying here. The people who kept their connection with the earth in spite of being deprived of their timeless heritage by the sacrosanct scriptures. Alright, that's a very poignant thing to say. Basically, that our real heritage has been we've been deprived of our heritage by these scriptures that are held as so precious and sacrosanct and untouchable, the Word of God type of stuff. Okay, we're gonna pull that apart like a crumbly booger. All right. And is there anything else? And then, of course, there's another place where he kind of says, "I don't, I'm not here to insult any of the faiths," and I can see that, because this isn't about the people of the faiths. This is about the people who contrived the faiths, and their fuckery, plain and simple. And so one of the things I'm going to get into, and I think it's in the second chapter, obviously I'm going to start with the first chapter, and that's page 49. But in chapter 2, we kind of get into the successive layers of it's mine. No, it's mine. In other words, constant usurpation. And of course, usurpation is the story of this this planet, at least with regards to control of, let's call it, the psychic space. Okay, page 49. Here we go. So, and it's funny, some of the names of these texts are pretty funny. This is called Prologue to the Debate Between the Tree and the Reed. Okay, you might, but then where does the next one come from? The next one is really Prologue to the Debate Between Two Insects. All right, anyway. So on page 49, here's this little part. The great earth sparkled. Vast earth was covered with silver and lazulite, adorned with diorite, chalcedony, cornelian, antimony, draped in the splendor of plant life and prairies. Majestically did she bear herself. The sacred earth had a verdant surface, and she had made herself resplendent for a pure heaven on. And heaven's sublime firmament consummated the marriage with the spacious earth. He thus poured into her womb the semen of the valiant tree and reed. Earth, like the perfect cow, found herself impregnated with the rich seed of heaven. Earth herself gave a happy birth to the plants of life. Joyously the earth produced abundance. She exalted wine and honey. Okay, so from that passage, because part of this is we're trying to tie what was from the Sophianic. Okay, so from the let's call it the Gnostic mythos or the Sophianic narrative. What this passage would be kind of about is where they speak of the panspermia that was ejected from the pleroma, which is the center of the galaxy, which is where the aeons or the gods, and that's the aeons is the, I guess, Greek word or the Gnostic word, which is probably Greek. And so the aeons dwell in the center of the galaxy in something called the pleroma. That's P-L-E-R-O-M-A, and it means the fullness, because everybody's there. It's the fullness. And Sophia which means wisdom, was one of those emanations. And being as most emanations come in pairs or syzygies, her pairing was with Thelete. So basically, we have wisdom and intent were birthed together. And then if we could get into, obviously there's many aeons, but again we're going to kind of focus on the aeon that became the Earth, and then who we're working with. And okay, so the sacred earth had a verdant means green, and she made herself resplendent. So anyway, this is, for me, this is more of a poetic telling, and again, the sources are I think they're trying to be true, but of course they're still kind of celebrating heaven, and of course that's where Sophia comes from. and heaven means the pleroma, because they say on. And of course, then later on starts to become a personage. But that's not the case. That's a little bit of projection, because in the original, the most primordial of Greek myths, they still have it pretty straight. There's Gaia, and there's Uranus, or heaven, which is where we get on. Okay, so to go now to get in Genesis 1:11 through 1:13 is the power of the Elohim that provides the seed of fruit trees that will permit the earth to sow itself and create a fertile and verdant soil. This is also what the Sumerian text preserved in the Louvre under the catalog number, and again, that stuff is crazy. So then there's a kind of a comparison that gets done, and that would be this page here. And so from the clay tablets, it says, when heaven, the god of wind and the abode of water, created heaven and earth. Okay. Okay, basically they're just kind of showing the context there. And so the sacred earth was green. She had made herself resplendent for the pure heaven. And heaven's sublime firmament consummated the marriage with the spacious earth, and poured the semen of the valiant tree and reed. Okay, we already went through that. And then they kind of put how that was rendered in Genesis, saying, the Elohim said, let the earth sprout vegetation, plants yielding seed, and fruit trees on the earth bearing fruit after their kind with seed in them. And it was so. The earth brought forth vegetation, plants yielding seed after their kind, and trees bearing fruit with seed in them after their kind. Okay, so here we have the Elohim. Okay, and again, so for me, there are different times where the Elohim, in many ways, could be translated as the gods. The pleroma and the many aeons there could be called where the gods are. So one of the things that we have in the text coming out of the past, and then especially when we get to the sacrosanct scriptures, is we have new ideas burying old ideas. It's kind of like where you find, like even in Göbekli Tepe, they're saying there's another settlement underneath there. What we see when we look at ruins, very often, especially ruins that haven't been excavated, very often under those ruins are other ruins. And in many ways, the way we're getting the information, in many ways, what happens is there's an old thing, and the new usurpers come along, they put their history, and that's actually how our history has come to us, which what looks like Joseph Scaliger did, like during the Renaissance period. Let me check my live chat and make sure. Okay, wisdom in intent, like yin and yang. Okay. Okay, Robin, be well. Thank you for dropping by. Hello, Jet Pet. I see you just came. Oh, hello, Vern. I was thinking of you, but I was so busy preparing, I couldn't send something out. So I guess it was meant to be. You must have got my. I wish Vern would be there. Yes, Elohim is Hebrew for something. Basically the I am suffix in Hebrew generally connotates, it's plural. So we kind of know what Elo might mean, and then him. So, but there's a lot of when you speak to certain what I call apologists. Oh no. Anyway, I'm not even gonna get into that. I have plenty of work and things to say here without attacking anything. And occasionally, there will be a remark on the bad odor that comes from certain things that happened. But so they kind of, again, there's all of this claiming of natural things by the people who came into Mesopotamia, and I guess that's where I definitely want to make a little comment, and I've made it in some of my other things. Let me take my glasses off for a second. In that, when we kind of get even the Anunnaki, those who from heaven to earth came. Basically, they arrived out of the sky. Okay, I mean, that's what you would say. I mean, you know, people arrived out of the sky. And when we kind of have from the Vedas themselves the directions of and illustrations of the manas, you know, these flying machines. Now, when I've seen some of these renderings of the machines, they don't look like interstellar craft to me. But they're certainly anti-gravity, and they, to me, I guess I would call them within the atmosphere, traveling. So, the Anunnaki, in my opinion, arrived from, could have, okay, I'm not going to get definitive here, because it's, you know, they could have arrived from outside our atmosphere, and they could, and let me not get ahead of myself, but from one simple thing, from another ancient legend, or the legends of Lemurian Atlantis. Given when, and there were different time periods. I mean, you have some time periods of the Anunnaki being here 400,000 years ago, like down in South Africa. And then you have other things like 200,000 years ago. And then, of course, the tablets that we're getting here seem to be about 5,000 years old. Roughly. You know, it's just to put it in the ballpark. And again, I'm going to go from time to time. Hello, Darcy. All right, get back to work here. Which means putting on the glasses. Okay, so, but first back to our examination of the tablets. The divine genealogy of the firm ground. And again, to me, this is a lot of claiming. Oh, did I finish my thought? So anyway, to me, they arrived in Vimanas. And so they could have arrived from any place on the planet. There's certainly endless amounts of lore of Atlantis or some other, you know, Hyperborea. You know, it doesn't have to be Atlantis, where there was technology. And the Vedas are another source of flying machines. Now, they don't, again, these flying machines seem to be to get from point A to point B on this planet. So for me, the idea that the Anunnaki got their name by arriving in flying craft works for me. Where their origins are not so clear, but I don't even know that it really matters. I think it's interesting. I think knowing would be super cool, but I don't know that it applies, especially as we're trying to reclaim both our memories, our heritage, and our planet. So, when heaven, the god of the wind and the water abode, created heaven and earth, they wanted to make the signs apparent. So they established the stations and instituted positions of the heavenly bodies. They designated the stars and assigned them their trajectories. They drew stars into constellations in their own image. They measured the duration of day and night. They created the month and the year. They traced the paths of the moon and the sun. Thus did they make their decisions concerning heaven and earth. Now, this is an interesting passage. To me, there's a little bit of chest thumping and exaggeration. But there's also what, from the Gnostic traditions, is the fuckery of the solar system. Not that the Gnostics called it the fuckery. But what in the Sophianic Narrative and recovered Gnostic thing works. And I'm not talking, I mean, of course we can get them from the Nag Hammadi text too. Nag Hammadi will obviously come into this at some play, but I wanted to play here first. I didn't want to just dig into the Gnostic stuff because a lot of people have been following the Anunnaki for years, and much of it is Zechariah Sitchin based. And do I want to say anything bad about Zechariah? No. he brought the subject up, and it's why, and anybody who read his books is now, it got fascinated. And now that to me greater scholarship is coming along, some of the things that he posited, like what Nibiru is or was, can be placed better. Apparently, Jordan Maxwell, I watched on video Jordan Maxwell say the words, because he was a good friend of Zecharia Sitchin, and he kind of spoke to, I don't know if he was there on his deathbed, but one of the things Zecharia Sitchin says, we will never see Nibiru in our lifetime. He told that to Jordan Maxwell. And Jordan Maxwell said he told him a lot of other things, but he was sworn to silence. And the conspiracies continue. Yawn. I have to open my mouth, don't I? Anyway. I hope I finished that thought. So, oh yeah, the Gnostic thing. So, the Gnostic mythos says that the archons, along with Yaldabaoth, or Yaldabaoth, if you want to say it like that. I call him Yaldi. And I'm not going to, who knows, maybe in the course of the next hour and a half, I'll get a little bit into the Gnostic creation story. But anyway, we'll just get to Yaldabaoth and his 7 main capos or captains, and those would be the head archons, and also known as the heptomad, hepto 7, and according to the Sophianic Narrative, when as Sophia was turning herself into our planet, so that this particular humanoid species would have a very special place to be, because apparently humanoid species throughout the galaxy were not doing as well as they were hoping. You know, this isn't a cosmic experiment, but that's part of the other creation story, the Sophianic Narrative. But anyway, the Gnostics tell us that while Sophia was turning herself into the planet, they at first, I mean, there's a lot of rich stuff in here, and when we start doing the Nag Hammadi, some of this will come out in greater fullness, because it gets told in those texts. As she was forming and turning and coalescing and becoming the planet, they were creating a solar system to capture her and us. And so they turned themselves into the planets. From the Gnostic perspective, the sun, the moon, and the earth are part of a triune, unique creation. Now I know there are all kinds of theories about whether the moon is artificial or not. We could find a theory for everything on the internet, and we should just expect that. But so anyway, that's the triune, and there's a beautiful story about the nobility of Sophia as she came into this sector, and that the sun, which was just a normal sun, and that the archons were going to use the sun to create their solar system around, and they did. But before they managed to do that, apparently the sun, which is also an entity, realized that Sophia was upright and a beautiful being and an aeon, and gave its allegiance to her. So even though they still constructed the solar system, they no longer had the allegiance of the sun. Let me pause there for a second and look at the live chat. Okay, Janet, thank you. I have to come in and I want to make sure that I say hello to people. Janet Burville. She said, watch tomorrow. Very late here. Okay. Unplugged. Alright. Anyway, back to the story. And where was I? Oh yeah. So they created astrology, and we got our knowledge of astrology from the archons themselves. And that'll probably come out also. I mean, the contact by the mystics and magicians that allied themselves with the Aldebaoth produced endless amounts of fuckery. But we will undo that. So they create in creating astrology, they created what I call what's in a tarot, it's called the Wheel of Fortune. I call it the Wheel of Fuckery. And anybody who's ever dealt with astrology at all, oh, this is going to be a bad time for you. Oh, this is going to be a challenging time. Ooh, as we all know, there's good and there's bad influence in astrology. So then you have to ask yourself, who designed a system with shitty parts in it? Well, the shitty archons did. And of course, you would say, well, why would they put something good in? Because you have to, or the whole thing would fall apart. And also, you have to play that good, it's like, please, the book of Job, with Satan and Jehovah, working with Job. And Satan going, it's kind of like Job was going, go ahead, give him some more. I can't feel a thing. Go ahead. He'll never yield. I know it. I got his soul. Anyway. And in many ways, so you see that same kind of perverted sense of humor in the creation of the astrological signs. And how they play, and how you have these oppositions and squares and whatever. And again, who would design a system full of fuckery? The archons would. And again, everybody, we'll break down all kinds of words as we go on, because this is going to be an ongoing discussion. So now you kind of have an idea of what they say here is that they established the stations and instituted positions of the heavenly bodies. Okay, so again, they designed the solar system. The bullshit here is they designated the stars and assigned them their trajectories. Oh, please. Oh, please. They drew the stars into constellations in their own image. Yeah, of course. There was already constellations. They go, oh, that's me, and that one over there is me. Again, we're seeing usurpation, mimicry, inversion, out and out fuckery. It's again, it's a clown show. It's a cosmic clown show. So okay, we got that part. So that's the great treatise of Chaldean astrology. If you recall, during last week I said, I was getting a little ill and I thought, oh, okay, I'll have this nipped. No, actually I had one of the roughest weeks of my life, and I'm still coming out of it. I did take some Sudafed to clear my sinuses, so I think I'm a little bit up. Okay, so that was page 49. So now we're going to jump ahead to page 57. The Elohim settle on earth. This is chapter 2, and on this, it's a next clay on the next clay tablet. It's funny. It's named BM74329. They don't, and I wanted to say, oh, what does BM mean? I don't know if it's dealing with some of the stories in these tablets. Maybe it's like a bowel movement. I jest. Okay. And so just reading, I'm going to be reading a little bit from this book. Yeah, I mean, again, one of the things I notice is a lot of people, there's a lot of fluff in some of this stuff. Because again, or I should say a lot of, yeah, it's kind of like, or puff. Because there's a lot of chest puffing here. Okay, here we go. In the beginning, chariot or plow to till the soil. So they kind of use the word chariot. In the beginning, the chariot wed the earth. A family was founded and a power. We should break up the virgin soil into clods. Thanks to the chariot, they created the sea. From the place of their work, they engendered the wild beasts. They created the fortress of Dunu, the shelter for both the chariot and its family. The chariot took on the absolute power of the hard soil. So again, chariots, you know, some kind of flying machine most likely. And then here it reads, the enigmatic figure of the chariot takes its name from the Akkadian term harbu, which is generally translated as chariot. Now, we're going to get into some interesting stuff here. So here's a passage, and I'm reading some of these passages because they kind of they need to be pulled apart because there's a lot of stuff in them. Now the earth turned to its children, the wild beasts, and said, "Come and let me love you." The wild beast married the earth mother. The father chariot was eliminated and buried in the hard ground of the favored place. Absolute power was taken over, and the elder sister, the sea, was married. I mean, again, the language that comes out of these is really quite interesting. But, so here, for his own commentary. So it's interesting. The earth turned to the children, the wild beast, to its children, and said, "Come, let me love you." And then it gets a little bit crazy. But the thing is that this chariot that was going to break everything up was eliminated. So the narrative, this is now the author. The narrative now takes both a poetic and uncertain turn. Obviously, life developed. The wild beasts spread over the surface of the earth. Now, the interesting thing is that the word that it gets used for describe these beasts is Adam. And it's going to get fun here. So, the first animal, certainly Adam, spread over the surface of the earth, and the absolute power was established. Similarly, in Genesis 1:28, Elohim ordered mankind to be made in his image. Be fruitful and multiply and fill the earth and subdue it. We will see later that according to the clay tablets, man already existed when the Annunaki gods appeared on earth, but was considered a wild beast, only good enough to drink stagnant water and eat grass. And that's kind of like where I'm picking apart here, is that many people who were kind of working with the Anunnaki thing, it looks like the Anunnaki created humanity. And then is it saying here, no, when they arrived, there were plenty of people on the planet. So then I'm hoping within the next hour and 15 minutes, we might start to form, a couple of suppositions on just who did they create and what does that mean for where we are today. And I hope that once I put down the book, I can then interact with the live chat, because this is something I don't want to I'll put out my idea, but I would just love to really turn a chat into like a back and forth. And then he says, it was considered man was considered a wild beast, only good enough to drink stagnant water and eat grass. For some reason, the text says in order to complete the project of creation, the chariot was buried in the ground and the sea then married. If we pursue the logic of the text, this would mean that the family authority power decided to stay on earth, perhaps without intending to return, since the chariot was eliminated and buried in the ground. Okay, so this is now where it gets funny. They start talking about the various creations. So then, and this is where we see that this is where they kind of like, it's just one wave after another wave after another wave of them, not us. We're here. They're the ones who keep on screwing each other. But of course, they suck to begin with. Okay, I'm going to be a little humorous. Please don't take everything literally. Okay, then came Lahar, offspring of the wild beasts, who eliminated, again, listen to this, offspring of the wild beasts, who eliminated the wild beasts, who were buried in the paternal tomb of the hard ground. Then he took the sea, his mother, for wife. Then the sea overturned the earth, her mother. On the 16th of the month of Kislimi, that's November, December here, Lahar took over the royal and absolute power for himself. Okay, so this is Lahar. Then they get to the next one. Then the son of Lahar married River, his own sister. He eliminated Lahar, his father, as well as the sea, his mother, and buried them in the grave. In the first month of Tibiti, he took over the royal absolute power for himself. So first we have Lahar, took over the royal absolute power for himself. And then we have a son of Lahar, took over absolute power for herself. And then the god of the herd, son of Lahar, married his sisters, pastures, and poplars, and brought abundant vegetation on earth, receiving at the sheep, okay, blah, 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 blah. He took over the royal and absolute power for himself. Okay. So then the author, so after doing a few of these translations, the author opines, this text is reminiscent of Greek tragedy. In spite of the breaks in the tablet, we understand that the god of the herd, probably a second descendant of Lahar, also wed his sister, thus beginning a new cycle of creation on earth. This creative act made for fertile soil, abundant food for the cattle. That's an interesting concept. Abundant food for the cattle. Cattle is a domesticated species. Whoever domesticated it, it isn't a natural species. So over here, so again, they abundant food for the cattle, unless they're talking about human. Again, the contempt that they hold the humanity that they find when they, at least, or the humanity they find in the area, I'm not even going to say from another planet, although they could be from another planet, but they have nothing but disdain for the humanity that they find. And we were a rude and rough bunch, but this was our planet, and we were figuring it out. So, okay, I think Anton Parks does great translations, but his interpretations, because we all use our imaginations. His imagination works in ways that sometimes I'm going, you sure you want to, is that really where you want to go with that? But anyway, but we still have the translation, so he can do his interpretation of his translations. We can do our interpretation of his translations. So then the god of the herd, son of Lahar, married his sister. Oh, I think I just read that. Okay, so he says, oh yeah, it's in spite of the breaks of the tablet, we understand that the god of the herd, probably a second descendant of blah, 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 blah. Okay, I already read that. Then Harharnum, son of the god of the herd, married his sister Beletseri. He eliminated the god of the herd, his father, and his mother's pastures and poplars, and laid them in a tomb. On the 16th of the month of Adaru, he took over the royal and absolute power for himself. Right? Can't turn your back on these people. And now the story repeats itself inexorably. The next generation, which consists of the goddesses of the vineyard, took over the power of eliminating its predecessors. And so, let's say, Heyasun, son of Harharnum, wed his own sister. At the new year, he took the succession of his father's absolute power, but did not kill him. He seized him and made him a prisoner in his city, and put him in chains. So no new creation comes into being through this generation, which replaced the previous one. So this episode makes for the 7th generation. Okay, now remember, the heptamad is 7. So that's why 7 is so sacred in the Bible, because it's the seven. Well, you have the 7 archangels. Of course, some people take out the "on" and just call them archangels, but they're archangels. He took the succession of his fathers out. Okay, so but he did not kill him. So this episode makes for a 7th generation, a 7th cycle in this bizarre theogony. Unfortunately, we do not know the rest of the story, for the tablet is broken at the end of the first side. Okay, now is that where... Okay, that was 59. I might be done here. But okay, I think there's a couple of things here where they have the clay tablet source and then they have the New American Standard Bible. So let's see. I'm not trying to. There might be people out there who still associate the biblical text as sacred literature, and I don't really want to piss anybody off. At least not this stream. I'm just saying if there's anything here. Just because sometimes they have some interesting. Nah. Okay, the roots of the conflagration. So now we're going to be going to page 73. Better check my live chat. This way here, I won't get in the middle of things and. Piss them off. Hello, Dr. Michael Miller. Okay, it looks like I've kind of looks like Doc, you're the only one I haven't welcomed yet. Oh, Doc Illusion. Hello, Doc Illusion. Doc Illusion also does live streams, on Gnostic themed live streams, and Doc Illusion is the name of his video channel. And I'm going to refresh my page because it says I have bad video settings, and just make sure everything is good. Not now. Okay. All right. So anyway, I'm going to get back to the story, and I'm really glad you showed up, Doc Illusion. But got to put my glasses back on. Okay, so so the gods of this generation coexisted, and the reverberations of their clamor deserved Tiamat. Okay, and they get into all this other stuff. So this Tiamat is apparently either a primordial goddess, creator of life, mother of this family of gods, or a world, a planet with its oceans. Now the interesting thing is, this book here is Eden. Anton Parks wrote some books in French that I don't think have made it into English translation. Jerry Zeitlin, who has since passed on, used to have his own site, and since he passed on, nobody paid the dues, the site went down. And he had translations of some of Anton Parks' other works. And one of his works, he really gets into his visions, like in other words, how he experienced these people. And I got to read that stuff, so I have it in my memory. But now that I would like to present it to you, and memory can be goofy. So so it's kind of frustrating for me, because he had some really great stuff, and part of it is that Tiamat was a planet, or there was a planet, and he says it's Tiamat in his other writings. Was what is now the asteroid belt. It was a planet between Jupiter and Mars. And the Enuma Elish is actually talks about the blowing up of that planet. And Anton Parks says that there were that Enki Enki was belonged to a group that was more amphibious than reptilian, which is why often when you see depictions of that, the kind of fish guy, the fish person, the Namu. That's kind of like this, like an amphibian. It's can live in water or it partakes of both worlds. That's what an amphibian does. And he has like long passages of them being underground, and because there were many pools, and since he was an amphibian, they liked kind of like live, being in pools, and it's almost like these grottos filled with waters. And ultimately that planet was blown up, and that's why we have the asteroid belt. So anyway, I mean, so much of this material can just make us all cross-eyed, but some of it isn't, and I'm working through the different pieces. So we have 73. It says, Tiamat and Apsu seem to have had a hard time keeping their youngsters in line, but the goddess, like any mother, was more indulgent than Apsu, who was prepared to call his creation into question and even destroy it upon the advice of his page. This part of the story seems to have inspired the Greek myth of Uranus, who imprisoned his children within the body of their mother Gaia. There may have been contacts between Mesopotamia and Greece, at least in the 8th century BC, when Hesiod composed his theogony. Let's see if there's anything here that is really worthy. Now, I mean, they get into some really crazy stuff here. I'll read it. What the heck? Now, everything that they had prepared at their meeting was repeated to their children. When they heard this, the gods were uneasy. They kept their peace and remained without sound. But the most intelligent, the most experienced, the subtle Ea, another name for Enki, who understands all, grasped their plan. Against Apsu he devised and arranged a master plan. He trained his august incantation against him, recited it to him, and tranquilized Apsu. Overcome by sleep, the page Mumu, the advisor, was too drowsy. Ea undid Apsu's crown, divesting him of his radiant mantle, and draped it on himself. Then, after having knocked him down, he slew him and locked Mumu up, barring the door. Then he established his dwelling on Apsu. Once he had immobilized and slain his enemies, Ea used his triumphant cry against his adversaries. So, here we have another one. Now, it's like stealing the crown. And I know, but Enki's the good guy, right? Good and bad isn't so applicable in so much of this. We have our interests, they have their interests, and when the interests are closer rather than divergent or less adversarial, I guess you could call that good guy. I mean, there does seem to be some affection, according to the things, of Enki for humanity. Why not? And let's see if we can find anything else here. What's interesting is I have some names. Now, John Lash does find a lot of, I guess what you would call aspects of the goddess in many of the dakinis that you find in like India and Tibet area. And so let's think of that word, dakini. Matter of fact, there was even a kind of a tarot deck a couple of decades ago called it the Dakini Oracle deck. But why I bring that up there is that according to the Mesopotamian sources, Damkina Ninki Nudi Mood Ea's wife was a very ancient goddess, a living embodiment of the mother goddess. The myth says that Ea and his wife were the parents of the new deity called Marduk. But I mean, Damkina and Dakini, I kind of, they sound like, one sounds like a corruption of the other, or just, a slip of the tongue kind of thing, which is kind of how languages move around. Okay, there was something at page 79 at the bottom. Okay. The Mesopotamian sources are very sparing of details about the cosmic Duku, abode of the gods, which is hardly ever mentioned. The various passages that deal with this celestial place are always associated with the gods and point out they came from there. Yet one particular constellation is often depicted on ancient Mesopotamian seals, and most Assyriologists agree that this constellation is that of the Pleiades. A minority of specialists maintain that they are the 7 planets instead of the wandering stars, that is, the 5 planets visible to the naked eye, the sun and the moon. The hypothesis of 7 planets is unlikely, however, since many seals now show 7 stars, and on the same seal the sun or moon in the heavens, and sometimes even both. Strictly speaking, the Sumerian name for Pleiades was Mul-Mul, M-U-L-M-U-L, which means the constellation of constellations, but can also be translated as stars. The repetition indicates a plural. If we consider the Pleiades as the constellation of gods, which Sumerian and Akkadian documents cite as the place of our origin of all things, then this would have been the foremost of the constellations in the heavens. Okay, now let's get back to kind of the Gnostic cosmology. The Pleiades, well, I know where we are in the galaxy. We're in the third spiral arm. So we're a little bit on the outside of our galaxy. And when you think of a panspermia, John Lash describes kind of like an insertion tube. Yeah, that could work for me, but when I was doing my journeying, I saw the panspermia almost like, think of from a celestial event, think of something like a CME. But from something we can imagine, if you've ever seen those little puff balls, those like kind of mushrooms, when you kind of hit them, there's like a kind of a cloud of spores. So if we can kind of think of a CME carrying a cloud of spores into the arms of a galaxy, is more how I can envision how the panspermia got into the arms of the galaxy. Again, this is different than how John Lash tells of how the panspermia got there. But see, John Lash, besides being a guy in shaman, also has other people. I'm doing this on my own. So if I could sit with other people who are doing this journeying, I might come to a different conclusion. It's one of the reasons why I did that one campfire, and we'll be doing others. The whole way we get to real answers is we bring our visions, our dreams, and voices even that we hear, and we share them together, and then together we kind of get somewhere. When we're left to interpret things on our own, I guess they'll be uniquely our own, and this doesn't mean that they're wrong, but they're I just find when we sit and we compare notes, we really get to something. Excuse me while I have a little more protein. It's made from pumpkin seeds, and it's really kind of musky. But it's hearty. So this is one of the things that to me is interesting, and is that I have little again I consider the Sophianic narrative and how the Gnostics told the creation of the world as a big. It's as the full package, like a big package without a lot of details. To me, it sits and it's beautiful. The details, well, that's where the devil enters, right? The devil's in the details. So, although when John speaks, because I've heard him a couple of times speak of this kind of like this tube that extended from the pleroma, which is at the center of the galaxy, kind of like over the arms. The inner arms, and then to the outer arm, and then kind of like an injection of the panspermia into Gaia. Now, maybe, again, maybe since Sophia turned herself into Earth a little late in cosmic history, that actually had to be like kind of like an injection straight to her. And John, that might be absolutely correct regarding the Earth. But the way the other species who would have showed up earlier in the panspermia, because imagine if you're in the pleroma at the center of the galaxy and you just kind of do a puff out into the arms of the galaxy, the panspermia is going to land on the first arm, then the second arm, and of course we can imagine it's like, ooh, you can imagine this kind of cloud blowing to the edge of the this edge of the spiral arms to spread its panspermia so that the experiment of life could begin on those things. In cosmic scale, from that first birth, let's call it burp, of the pleroma onto the galactic arms, now we can imagine that spreading across. That could be millions of years, as far as like when the first, panspermia fall on planets that might be able to support life, and then more falls. So you can see how there could be a staggering of life arising depending on when the panspermia found a place to be able to begin to unfold. And so with the Earth being on the third, with us being on the final arm, you can see that would be late. But if it's apparently Sophia got a little alarmed because there were already civilizations that were arising and falling of people, of an anthropoid type of being, and apparently this concerned her. And this is when this is part of the cosmic drama of like, she was so focused that she popped out of the pleroma. But that's getting ahead of ourselves. I want to get back to this story. And since I'm about to go to another chapter, it's time to check the live chat. Interplanetary copulation. That's from Doc Miller. Hello, David Null. You're my new person here. Hey, Raksha. Hello there. Okay, have I been? Make sure. David Null, Doc Illusion. Groovy. Hey, Groovy, you made it. Hello. All right, get everybody. Obviously, I'm going to try and finish up here and then kind of join in and actually have a little bit of a conversation or dialogue. So we were at page 79, and I took my finger out of the book. Here we are. Oh, okay. So I guess I should maybe, this might be a little bit helpful. The archons and Yaldabaoth arose through Sophia's goddess, again, she's an aeon. And when that energy came to the third arm of the galaxy, now it should be understood, Orion, okay, the constellation of Orion is further out than us. It's kind of like on the very edge of our galactic arms. And so when she shot out here, John Lash says, and I'm not sure whether this is in the material that he parsed out, that her energy kind of, some of her energy hit into that constellation, and the energy of that constellation had its own not exactly healthy quality. Now what's interesting in that book, I mentioned Anton Parks has earlier books, he actually speaks of this genealogy of races that come from the Pleiades and Orion, and he gets into the various stars. It's detailed. Apparently, there was the Annunaki group had pretty much broken up, where the males and females not only lived apart, they lived like on different planets or different star systems the males had just gotten completely out of control. So if they had already been if in other words, if there had already been some species of living sentient beings in that sector, when Sophia came a little bit later in the game, because things were screwing up, they were like beings like what were happening on Orion. So if some of her life germ got tied up with that funk, I can kind of understand why ultimately we get down to both in the Archons. It's kind of like, here was this life plasma that had no kind of form, and then it's kind of floating around in this area, and then it kind of the closest morphogenetic field were these male reptilian Draco type, beings, and then so they turn into it. And the Gnostics do describe the head Archons as being winged dragon reptilian type beings. And when Anton Parks gets even to further detail when he describes the head of the Anunnaki are albino white winged dragon-like creatures, and it's not like there's an abundance of them. This is like a royal family, and even more interesting, and we'll kind of see, I'll just drop this in here. When they were creating their version of humanity, and this is to me, this is really big. Matter of fact, I'll insert this, then I'll get back. As we've already kind of covered, we were here before them. Okay, and then we're going to get there's a term about man doing nothing. Matter of fact, I should get there, and then I can probably get back here, because that way we can have a conversation where I go. Let me finish up with the book. I'm almost done here. Or at least what I picked tonight. So there's the cosmic battle and the fate of man. And I just, it's from the Enuma Elish. And this is an interesting commentary. The Bible is silent on the episode of the cosmic battle, yet presupposes a conflict of this kind. This conflict is often mentioned in the ancillary literature of the Apocrypha. Of the Babylonian sources, the biblical account of creation has kept only the separation of heaven and earth, light and dark, waters above and waters below, the earth and the seas. But as it is, the Enuma Elish is not the only narrative from the Near East that mentions this conflict. It also appears in apocryphal writings such as those found at Nag Hammadi, in which the biblical god, branded as an impostor, fought against the forces of light. Okay, I think that was, hope you caught that. Now we jump to page 99. And this is where this is where I start finding some humor. Okay. And this is also where we start seeing that our mother was here and they knew it. Okay? We were here. Okay, 99. The holy Tigris and the holy Euphrates formed the sacred scepter of Enlil that steadied Karsag. The rivers provided abundance. The scepter protected our Lord. A prayer was addressed to obtain seedlings from the earth. At that time, man was not productive. The gods were innumerable. Prince made everything radiant. Man was not productive. So as we can see, the facsimile, there was a break in the, okay, blah, 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 blah. So to me, here's where it kind of gets funny when they, the gods pray to obtain seedlings of the earth. The gods pray. Now there's actually a deep, there's a thing where they pray to the earth that she may give them seedlings. So what's interesting, at one point when you read as they're one of them are killing the other, they make them sound like these celestial beings and gods and whatever. But when it comes time to getting a little actual real food, and you can't write a story about food and make it happen, they have to pray to the earth that she might give them seedlings. And there is that is an exact quote. There's a couple of overlappings, but here they kind of it's a more, let's see. No, it's not there. But right now they have the gods pray to obtain seedlings of the earth. In another passage they talk about the priestesses are praying to the earth that she may give them seedlings. And then so the gods pray to obtain seedlings of the earth. The Genesis says no plant of the field had yet sprouted. See, they're praying to Gaia. Can you give us something? And then of course the toxic male telling is no plant of the yield had yet sprouted. Okay. Okay. Okay, and then here's another from the clay from Mesopotamia. At that time, man did not produce anything. Genesis 2:5. There was no man to cultivate the ground. So, as you can see, the real thing is that the humans that already existed were not going to work for anybody. I mean, try and get a lion to work for you. That was like trying to get us to work for them. I mean, and also we might not have had the greatest intellect at that time. We might have been scratching our ass quite a bit. Anyway, so at that time, man did not produce anything. There was no man to cultivate. This is where, okay. Now here's where they start complaining, all right? This is the man they did not create. Man stood up in our reserve and appropriated our rations. He spoke of many trees. He had taken possession of his food and carried away. He toppled the trees of life. Basically, we raided their gardens. And what I mean, I'm talking about native humans. The ones that the goddess brought up and that were part of the panspermia. Not what they are about to do, because they can't get the man that's on the planet, or the humans that are on the planet, to do anything for them. They're wild and they belong to another deity. So man stood up, and then the American standard, the Lord God caused to grow the tree of life in the midst of the garden. But from the fruit of the tree which is in the middle of the garden, the goddess said, you shall not eat from it or touch it. Didn't work out. Anything here? So anyway, this is one of my favorite parts. I mean, I don't really, I don't enjoy the fact that we were being dicky, but again, we were hunt anything that grew on this earth was given to us. So just because some people come along and grow a garden, it's just like, excuse me, everything went to us. I'm just trying to find relevant parts because there's quite a lot of extra in here. So they have a passage here. I think it should be interesting. Oh, all right. So that's right. We had the for a certain reason yet to be termed, Queen Ninhursag ordered the burning of the trees that seemed to have become contaminated. Yeah, I mean, it makes sense. If you have like a pristine desert, and you have everything growing up fresh, kind of like a greenhouse, and then you bring in the wild stuff, chances are you'll have a problem. And that's what happened with them. As we raided their gardens, we brought the forest funk with us, and it didn't treat their plants so well. So Enki, the divine constructor of the garden, commanded the destruction with great fire of the infection that had flooded the plantation of the trees with great understanding of the goddess of the mountain of the storehouse, and to do this just before sunrise. He, Enki, spoke of our mother, of our lady, the faithful, our radiant goddess, of her ineffable splendor and of her kindness. Our food came from our Lord. He talked about the grain that grew and the wheat that was plenty, our radiant land and its solid foundation. And it's just really funny how it's kind of like, it seems like Enki is speaking highly of our mother, our lady, the faithful, our radiant goddess, of her ineffable splendor and her kindness. That's the end of the sentence. And then it says, our food came from our Lord. You know, so again, the people who are writing these texts have a real problem with feminine energy. I'm almost done with this stuff. The contamination of the garden. The episode of the contamination of the garden and of the gods is not to be found in the canonical Genesis account, but it has elements that were reused in the Bible, as we will see. And again, this stuff is very wordy, and it's because, you know, the gods like to be, they like their ass being smooched. Eden is the property of the gods. It's from Mesopotamia. The Lord God planted a garden in Eden. Any more here? Okay, we're the human beings here. It is written that Ninurta, son of Enlil and Nin-Karsag, was a nursling at this time. This is a very important detail, for this is the only Sumerian text that mentions Ninurta as a baby, which confirms my assumption that these texts collect the very earliest mythological writings telling of the genesis of the gods on earth. The procedure used by the matriarch Nin-Karsag to push away day and night seemed to involve a kind of magic. The sentence remains enigmatic, and it may mean that Nin-Karsag was the first to be restored to health thanks to her knowledge of medicine. Oh, that's right, the gods got sick. We gave them our bugs that we were immune to, but they weren't. I didn't read that part, but this is like after the fact. Oh, okay. I kind of went over that part where they got that they got sick from it, from us. And again, I don't, you know, I think the German word is Schadenfreude, when you get like a little bit of a giggle at somebody else's suffering. But we're not talking about the nicest. We're not talking about the nicest beings in the galaxy here. And they're talking about basically how, you know, how contamination was something that was always part of warfare, and if you like, smallpox blankets might bring some idea back. So we're going to get on. It is said that Enlil did not mention the door. Supposedly there was a gate or something that Enki might have left open so that humanity could get to the garden. It is said that Enlil did not mention the door, which means that he had been unable to keep the secret, unlike Enki. This is a subtle way of denouncing the latter's betrayal. Enlil declared, the source of our illness will be repelled from the face of the land. Protection will triumph. Enlil spoke of the inflammation that had spread to the divine embankment. Protection will triumph. In Eden, our property, we will have to burn the juniper trees. Our advantage would be to burn our production because of the opening of the door leaf. In Eden, we must cut down the juniper trees. The great sword, devourer of beef, our fortress has it in its possession. It is our knowledge. These words. From Enlil's shrine, with his firm gaze, ordered the reduction of the source of the inflammation and the rationing of those who were bedridden. Our great weapon of bronze, our knowledge, will persecute him. The bird discovered the sown field. So anyway, the Anunnaki are sick. And how'd they get sick? From us. It's a tragedy. Keep keeping an eye on the time here. And they just keep on talking. The sickness really got to them. The human beings are referred to here as being animals as both surprising and disturbing. The word used is ug in the section on the creation. I already mentioned the fact that the Sumerian term Adam, animals, beasts, herds, had the same meaning. The Akkadian equivalent is namasu, which can be phonetically decomposed as Sumerian nam-mas-su, which literally means the half portion on duty or half portion of responsibility, or the half portion of the fate of the gods. The Sumerian gods seem to have suffered from xenophobia, as sadly will be confirmed in what follows. No wonder that the experts in Assyriology were in no hurry to realize new official translations of these texts. Okay, so there's a lot of broken lines, but it says, sickness, sickness. It extended to completely encircle us. Man was like a stream. Okay, man was like a stream. Does it sound like there was a lot of us? Enki, the hero of life, the god of fruit, the hero of life, the god of fruit, poured a double portion of an alcoholic beverage he carried man away so that he would stay at the border. This is Enki and beer. Okay, so that he would stay at the border. So basically, I guess Enki said, come on. I mean, Enki's, I guess, kind of let him away. Hey, come on, we'll have a party over here, but you got to come out of the garden. So that he would stay at the border. Oh, our holy mother, go and govern the stream of the carnivorous man. The might of your garden be restored, of the presence of man. Our mother, holy lady, is there no power with you to expulse the illness? We pray insistently in our enclosure that we no longer be fever. The source of the illness, the fever expels it. So this is quite a different telling, right? You know, I mean, again, we've certainly heard some Anunnaki stories from Zechariah Sitchin and whatever. We haven't heard anything like this. And to me, this is quite refreshing. And this is from tablets. It's not like this guy, this is not the part where he's gone into his other world. This is from the things that they wrote about the time. So Enki, the master builder of the colony and guardian of the fruit garden, set out to make a healing potion. He was generally regarded as a friend of humans and fraternized with them. Being more resistant to the infection than his fellow colonists, maybe because he was slightly different genetic makeup, he was quickly back on his feet. Enki was given the mission of bringing man back to the border. This is further proof that he had a special relationship with the humans, and they're calling them human. You know, he's calling them humans. The matriarch was asked to restore order in the colony, even if this meant resorting to magic. The sickness, our foundation, was approached. The priestess, Ninharsag, the man, the priestess cried out. Enki, the lord of knowledge and of copper, from his dwelling, made and measured the alcoholic beverage, while the sickness still ravaged the lofty abode, while Ninurta was struck by pain like a slave, and he cried out in the shrine. Now, we don't hear much about the suffering of the gods in much of the other places, do we? But it sounds to me like they're having themselves a rough old time. And then, so there are many pieces of the tablet broken off at the beginning. Luckily, the number of times that the garden was attacked, 4, is recalled in line 9 at the bottom of column 15. Enki, the lord of knowledge and metal, prepared the remedy. Do not let him come. Do not let man appear. His leap is as firm as that of a wild steer. Sickness, the earth, O divine lady, speak. Establish our city. Do not let man inundate our land of abundance. Our reed boundary should be stronger. Its solidity against man will be completed. May the reeds be more numerous, O divine Lord, Ram of life. Do not, I mean, they're scared of us. So now we're going to find, I mean, do you now see why they needed to invent something that was like us, but wasn't us? Because we weren't having it. We're Sophia's children. We're children of the Pleroma. This is our planet. And they think, you know, again, I mean, this is This is what I like about this stuff, because you don't, in their vanity, it doesn't get told. As it comes down to us, oh, they were exalted, oh, they were bosses, they made us, we're slaves and all the rest of this stuff. It sounds to me like they were fucking terrified of us. That's why they had to invent a weak, domesticated creature. Not that we don't have some of those genetics in us, which is why we lay around talking about what they're doing to us. Oh, what they're doing to us, oh. It's almost like the Anunnaki talking about what man was doing to them. Okay, I'm almost done here. So anyway, they're all sick, and I think I might leave it there. Yeah, because you know what, we'll pick, because we got a half an hour to kind of have a little bit of a conversation. I'll keep the book nearby, and then Groovy Bean starts her live stream, and she'll be with Lisa Tenney again. So, and we'll end the stream. I know I'm going over there. You'll go where you go, but I know I see some people in the live chat that will be over there. So that's in a half an hour. They just mentioned there's no trace of the biblical serpent so far. Only a reference to the matriarch Nin Karsag, one of whose names was Lady Serpent. Nor is there any trace of a revelation that the serpent would have made to the humans, thus causing the fall of man. Again, the whole fall of man, sin. Somebody's got to, Son of God's got to bleed to free. I mean, again, can we? Before we all gag, let me stop. Before this issue could appear, the humans had to consolidate their relationship with a certain Enki, the builder of the settlement of the gods and overseer of the garden. So obviously it could get interesting, but again, we have half an hour here. I think I put in all kinds of fun stuff, or Anton Parks did, and I read it to you. I can take off my glasses, and now of course that I took a nasal decongestant. I'm going to mute my mic just for a second. Make sure I turn the right mic on. Okay. And now I'm going to turn my attention to the live chat. Okay. All right. So, we got 11 people here. They made us sandwiches. Love it. Poor bastards. Everyone has a talent. So anyway, maybe I need to catch up a bit. The name of the text. I was reading from Anton Parks' Eden. I currently can't see. I might be blocking myself. It's Eden by Anton Parks. The truth about our origins. And one of the reasons, of course, I'm doing this is not just that I think the Anunnaki has to be handled. The Sophianic narrative, I don't believe, can be told and in a way that people will feel satisfied unless we kind of get into all this other stuff. And I don't fault John Lash for not really going there. He can't, because he has focused. He's the book you really want to read by him is Not in His Image, because that's really where the scholarship is. And of course, he has it's a real book with an extensive bibliography, lots of great notes. So okay, I shouldn't be so distracted with the chat. I don't think I need those. And so he in many ways, I kind of see him as holding the core, and I think he's done a brilliant job. Now, the interesting thing is that when I do run into any kind of, let's say negative kind of comments, it's never so much about the material, it's about the man himself. And I think that look, he's an edgy personality. But he's also playful. I mean, John Lash is John Lash. But when people make it about a personality, instead of to me, one of the most important pieces of information that have been brought to us. I mean, this, John Lash, to me, is the Sophianic narrative represents our history and our cosmic history. And the restoration of it is important, and he restores it kind of in total. You can go through the Nag Hammadi text, and if you know the original story, you can find that story in the hot mess of the Nag Hammadi texts. Much of what can be, I mean, you can really almost pull the entire narrative out of there, but it's interspersed, it's mixed in with other things. The Nag Hammadi text being written in Coptic, so we kind of know that they were formed in around Alexandria, in that in the northern part of Egypt, which is also be called Lower Egypt, but that's not important because of the way the Nile flows, and when you read the Nag Hammadi text, you can see to me, what I consider the pollution of gematria coming into things. Alexandria, again, Alexandria was a metropolitan area. Metropolitan areas are, bustling and full of lots of energy, but often, there's, that's where the scammers go. It's pretty hard to scam a small town, but you can go in a city and just find some kind of corner. You can set up a pretty big scam, because one of the things people like about cities, and I don't like, is the anonymity. To me, an anonymity you only like when you're surrounded by idiots. If you're surrounded by good people, being anonymous is almost an insult. But kind of, we won't get into that whole city-country thing. It's time for another swally here. So anybody, I now have my eye on the chat here, and so if anybody wants to directly interface with me, I'm here to do that. But until I see that, I'll kind of keep on chatting here. I guess talking about somebody's surgeries for C3 is an interesting side conversation to be having to a book about Genesis and the Sophianic Narrative. Eden by Anton Parks, that is the book. Doc? Okay, I'm going to take a little pull on my cigarette. This is my little pipe fitter, and I have a little cotton in there to filter it. I feel that this is my second or third cigarette of the day. I'm really, really cutting down. Okay. Oh, well, that's why I started live streams, because the live stream allows, some of, the kind of the YouTube thing where somebody on the camera talks to an audience, but the whole idea for me is to try and, a good bulk of it is that, but then try and do this last half an hour. It might be Jet Pet. They mention, I don't know if that was it. I mean, I really don't know. That's not, I didn't see that particular thing. But again, I was going to the translations. Dead air is fear-born. Yeah, this is tobacco. Here's what I'm smoking. One of the reasons I'm smoking less is I think it's time for me to take a little smoking break. I had stopped using it sacredly, which means I was smoking too much. So it was time to get sacred again. So it's panspermia and not classic creation. I wonder if I'll go to hell for entertaining this idea. That's really very good that you brought that out, because really, I mean, as somebody, I mean, I was an altar boy. Okay, I was an altar boy for 5 years in the Episcopal Church, and when I left being an altar boy, I basically left an atheist, because we had 2 reverends, and as an altar boy, and you know, we hang out behind the scenes, and I got to ask any question I wanted, and the answers routinely sucked. Yeah, the answers routinely just didn't get anything done. Mysteries hidden behind mysteries. I mean, I'm comfortable with the absolute beginning of everything can remain a mystery, but you know, once we kind of, you know, get into, you know, sweating and bleeding and all the rest of that stuff, it doesn't have to be so mysterious. And when we start looking at how much of our history is covered up, we can see that all this mystery is to support a usurpation narrative. Okay, Pleroma, and do you mean Abraxas? Probably Abraxas. Abraxas, I think, was one of the names they also attributed to Yaldabaoth, but again, this in the Nag Hammadi, they are starting. It gets, to me, it gets populated with phantoms in many ways. Again, Gnostic. What we're reading in the Nag Hammadi text, a lot of it, because again, you have, first of all, you have a lot of the writings of Valentinius. Valentinius almost became pope, during his time. He was in the running to be pope of these, you know, the early papacies before Rome took it over. But here was, okay, so to me, if somebody was going to be a pope, that is so not Gnostic. And that's one of my issues, is that the Nag Hammadi text for me are full of Gnostic material, but the material itself I wouldn't consider it Gnostic text. The Gnostics did not do the kind of magic that starts showing up in some of the names. Most of the magical systems, like whether it's Solomonic magic, you know, almost every magic system that we know today is magic that the archons gave us so that they could interact with us, and to, you know, and give us the things they wanted to give us, and also to interact with us, because by interacting with us, they could mimic us better. I mean, a lot of the ancient knowledge that people might get from, you know, some being that could be the archon, you know, an archon, they got from us. If they tell you any truth, they got it from being with us, and that's one of the reasons they created a magical system, is because they knew the human psychology. They know humans want, you know, there'll always be somebody. I mean, the average person today, I mean, like if you could meet somebody who calls himself a witch, and you want to talk a little magic with them. Oh, I know some hexes. I know a love spell. It's like, oh please, oh please, oh please, just, oh please. But magic to me was something that the uninitiated wanted to play with, and of course, once they started playing with that, they felt a sense of power. And then they had these beings that were representing themselves as angels and whatever, but in the dialogues between, you know, people would command the angels, and they learned so much about us, and then they used it against us. Went to Catholic, first grade to high school. All my cousins, my father's brother's children, who lived a few blocks away from me in the Bronx, they went to Catholic school. Oh my God. It was like, it was like reading tales of the Inquisition, some of the shit they went through at the hands of the nuns. And then I had a few friends who actually went, you know, where they were brothers. Oh man, I'm telling you, I mean, like these were like tales of the Inquisition. It was brutal. It's just, you wonder how something that professes to be the religion of love, and then almost anybody who's gone to one of their institutions, they come back with, "Can somebody remove those memories from my head, please?" Okay, let me look here. I'm reading the chat for a second. Oh, Doc will be back. His battery died. Wow, David, that's a pretty rough experience there. Okay. So part of where, to me, things are going to get a little interesting is we all know that the Anunnaki, or these gods, created a being. Okay, you see it in, again, what is Genesis? It's this whole group. Although the Anunnaki, Yaldabaoth, and the Archons are not the same. The Anunnaki clearly have physical bodies and are organic beings. The Archons are inorganic beings. They live in our solar system. But once again, they created the solar system. Okay, since they say they created the planets. I feel that why they created planets was to anchor their energies, which is what the basis of astrology is. That's why there's energies in the planets. And so here's an interesting little thought exercise. There's the heptamad. Okay, that's the seven capos, or the archon angels of Yaldabaoth, or Jehovah. But again, I'm gonna call him Yaldi. This way here we can kind of use the Gnostic name. We can use a shortened version of it because he's a dick, and we won't use names that come later because they were associated with religions that some people that come in here might belong to, and then suddenly, "That's it, I'm done with you mudwiz, you insulted my God." And of course that's how that virus works, and we really don't want to kick that in. What? Blame shifter motherfucker? Oh, that's Darcy. Okay, you have your Naturits moment there or something. Or maybe I'm just missing the context. So to me, where things are going to get interesting, especially from, let's call it a Lashian perspective. If you have listened to, John Lash has been doing interviews for years, and recently he's done the Mandela Effect Decoded, 64 videos plus 1 or 2 on the side. Excuse me. And now he's going over the fembot, Sophia, gladly. I mean, it's almost like when he made that video, it's like, did he visit me? Did we have a discussion in the astral and we woke up the next day and had the same thoughts? But one of the people who I had a few exchanges in the comments last night on last week's show, and he was picking on John Lash, but he was picking on some of the things that you can pick on John Lash as a person. See, there's a difference. To me, there's John Lash the person, then there's the body of his work, and you can separate the two. So, if you've been listening to him at all, although he's quite accepting of all of humanity, which makes sense since we're all Sophia's children, but he has a particular fondness for the Aryan grouping. Now, actually, to be quite correct, the Aryans doesn't mean white. It's the fifth root race. But sometimes it seems like it does mean just white. And so here's where it kind of gets tricky. We know that this planet was teeming with us when the Anunnaki at least came to the Middle East. Because again, I'm not sure they're from off planet. But when they arrived in the Middle East, the place was teeming with us. And we were, as they described, useless to them. Well, you know, and just like we kind of considered the wild ox to be useless, or somebody considered the wild ox to be useless and then domesticated into the cattle. Basically, you know, I mean, look at a ram is a male sheep, okay? Now, when you look at a wild ram, what kind of coat does it have? It has a coat like a deer. It doesn't have wool. So the fact wild sheep don't grow wool. So what we're seeing coming out of that milieu is domesticated animals, including a domesticated human. And so to the creation story that we know either from Anunnaki or biblical sources is the creation of a domesticated slave. Because we, the indigenous people of this planet, weren't having any of that shit. So they had to create something that was a watered down version of us. And obviously he could interbreed with us. True, Doc. True divinity. Worship was created for the false gods. Because first of all, they had stolen it, so they're insecure. You know how insecure people are? They can never get enough validation. And that kind of lies, I think, almost at the heart of their need for that attention, because they know that they stole shit. And they still want to be good, so they're guilty. And that's why it's like, please tell us we're wonderful. Please tell us we're wonderful. Oh, please pray to us. Easier moderation. I'm not sure. Michael, Doc, why are you telling me about did somebody ask how to do something here? I'm not quite sure why we're getting a moderation tutorial here. Especially in the middle of my dialogue here. And I am working. My eyes are on the chat, so please be mindful that I'm reading. Okay, so yeah, so obvious, and then of course there's also a parasitic nature with blood and stuff. But there's two different sides. There's organic beings, there's inorganic beings. So the inorganic beings that need that life force that gets released from the blood to try and just be a little closer to us. Yeah, yes, Jet Pet. Iran, Aryan, yep. We have 8 minutes until 10, but I'm going to close up in about 6. And then I will personally run off the Groovy Beans live stream. So actually, rather than me talking, because it's very easy for me to think I'm going to take a minute and take 10. Anybody want to say something before I close down the this week's live stream? And thank you all for being here. I guess I'll start there. Thank you, each and every one who has contributed, who's been here, come back, and making this live stream interactive. What do I know about orbs? From a Gnostic perspective, nothing. I mean, can't you hear me, Gnostic? I have all kinds of ideas about orbs, but sometimes I suspect them. That's what it is. I can't, if I had them coming into my room regularly, I would be able to kind of communicate with them. I haven't really encountered orbs. All my orbs I normally encounter are in people's pictures. But sometimes I get the feeling that they're kind of ethereal monitoring devices, or even two-way, where they could be listening devices and they could also be broadcasting devices, and but they certainly are interactive. So anyway, that's again, I can't say a whole lot. What do I know about orbs? I don't know anything about orbs. I know that I've seen plenty of pictures of them. I've seen them around Bill Ryan. He has a picture where the orbs are all around him. It's enough to make you wonder about them. And okay, let me just kind of thank you, Niche. Thank you, Jet Pet. These are, people are saying nice things to me, and I do appreciate that. Other realms. You know something? Our own realm. This is, I guess I'll just close really quickly. We use the word supernatural. Supernatural is just the continuation of kind of, let's call it, the visible spectrum. And you might, I am an anatomist, and so I know a lot of the terms that are used in anatomy. And super often means above. So we have the natural world, which is the one that we kind of are, that our five senses appropriate very handily. And then you have, and that would be like kind of like the visible light spectrum. And then we get into when we kind of, our eyes no longer perceive. The moment our eyes can't perceive, we fall into the supernatural. Now the interesting thing is that it seems like our eyes perceive to the level that our tactile senses can interact with. And in many ways you can see that as like a perfect tuning of our senses. If there is like a point of a fineness in frequency where it's no longer like in our tactile range, I guess it's probably seeing it would just be a little bit wild. I remember, I got 2 more minutes. I remember when I had my Kundalini rising in the summer of 1988, and how that lasted a few weeks. Driving was almost dangerous because my third eye was wide open, and I didn't know whether to drive around things or avoid. I mean, let me tell you, to have your third eye open while you're negotiating this world is not fun. And but you can negotiate this world with your heart chakra open with no problem. Anyway, it's 9:56. Let me just kind of quickly read what's on here, and then I want to say good night. And yeah, Sandra Clock, you say something, and I kind of started with David Null. When I had become an atheist with no problem, and then I read some Lobsang Ramtha books, kind of got a little bit agnostic. Then I discovered the Seth material and kind of came back in to all that is. Okay, all that is what he called, and it's a nice thing, but there was a bit missing from there. And so I remember when I finally got exposed to the full Sophianic Narrative, thanks to John Lash, that when I went to plug into her, I realized I still kind of had little tendrils into Yaldi's world. And the absolute severance, the taking out of the astral obsidian and going, I cut all ties. And I plug into my Divine Mother and accept her, and she is God locally, okay? Because we all know about the pleroma. But as far as where we derive our sense of ethics, morality, goodness, and where we might turn to for inspiration, she's it. That was spooky because of that was like the last part of the programming where that go to hell shit shows up. God might be mad at you for accepting your mother, you know, and then you just have to realize that's the last crust, you know, that's the last crust of that childhood virus embedding, and it's those last bits of roots, that last bit of that toxic mycelia from that thought system. And it really takes some bravery, but until you do that, you do not get plugged in. So that's it. Anyway, it's 9:59. Love to you all, and I'm heading over to Groovy Beans, and thank you. Let me get to my thing and stop streaming.